layer portion altogether. We'll talk about what is a network layer and its services. Um, the very important device at the network layer, the core device of your computer networks is the router. And we are going to see what's exactly happening inside the router, its hardware architecture and software architecture, and how does it route the packet from one device to another device or from one network to another network. And we also will concentrate on internet protocol, where we'll start with the datagram format, then IPv4 addressing, which I will comfortably skip because we have spent almost 4 sessions in learning about IPv4 addressing. Then we also will look into internet control messaging protocol and IPv6 as well. Proceeding, we will also learn about the routing algorithms. They are link state routing protocol, distance routing protocol, the mix of hierarchical routing protocol, specifically RIP version 1, RIP version 2, EIGRP, and OSPF. These are the protocols which we'll be learning. How do they work? What are their internal architecture, right? So, and finally, we also will conclude the session or this network layer topic with routing in the internet, that is border gateway protocol, right? So, very interesting session. So, I'll try my best to make you understand each and every concept. But at any moment, you can raise your questions so that I'll be happy to answer your queries if you have got anything on the network layer. Right. So when you talk about the network layer, uh, I wanted to compare this with the transport layer, right? So in the transport layer, we have made one statement very, very clear. That is, the routers or the intermediate devices are not at all aware that something is happening between two devices. All they know is the transmission of packets. All right. They were not aware, or they are not going to know that there is a TCP connection, there is a end-to-end connection happening between this host and the other host. All right. Whereas in the network layer, every of your devices and all the routers are going to take part in the communication. All right. So routers are running in the network layer. So what is the primary functionality of network layer? You could see on the screen. It transports the segment from one machine to another machine. Very simple. Sir, my duty is to take the packet, take the segment from one place to another place. That's all. Is it between process? No, it is not between process. It is between the devices. Then who will take the packets between the process? It is the transport layer, that is specifically TCP and UDP, as we have learned so far. But network layer takes care of transmission of packet or segment from one device to another device. Keep it as simple as that. So what are the other things? On the sending side, you have got the data from the application layer. It comes to the transport layer. From the transport layer, the network layer receives the segment, all right, where it does the encapsulation. And we are also going to talk about what is this encapsulation, what is this segmentation, and related things shortly, right? So it encapsulates the datagram, then it pushes the data to the data link layer, all right? On the receiver side, what happens? The data link layer receives the packets, all right? Then it decapsulates and it sends to the transport layer, all right? So network layer is having the neighbors as transport layer on the upper side and the data link layer at the lower side. All right. So network layer protocol is running in every of the device. As you could see on the fourth point on the screen, it runs on every device, including router. That is a specialty. All right. And also the router is examining the packet header for very, very important procedure. All right. Very important thing here is router does two things. One is it does routing, the other one is it does forwarding. All right. So two major things are carried out by the router, and hence router opens the packet at the network layer, works on that, prepares the packet, and it sends it. All right. So this is something important, where not packets are not sent as it is. It's opened, some value is changed, and then it is forwarded. So every time a fresh packet is created by the network layer before it is forwarded to the data link layer, all right, en route to the destination. Moving on. All right, so this is a simple animation given by the author of the presentation. It is not by, it is not done by me. I thank Cross and Ross for sharing this presentation for the class to be, so that I can teach you. Right. So you could see the packet which was originated at this device here took its route via various devices, routers, and access points and everything. Finally, it reaches. So you could see on every of these routing devices, you could see it runs on the network layer. So please remember, henceforth the complexity slowly increases, because we have to look at the network layer in the perspective of the applications as well as in the perspective of the intermediate devices. So there are two network layer functionalities. Of course, there are three. The third one is addressing, because IP addressing is a very critical and crucial. In other words, it's a key process which happens in the network layer. In addition to that, there are two more key functions. They are forwarding and routing. All right. And many a times, if you look at different textbooks, or if you look at the internet resources, you can see the authors using the routing and forwarding as the same word. All right, so they don't discriminate these two, but there is an important difference between these two. You can look at the screen on the right hand side. An analogy is given where what is routing, what is forwarding. Routing is the process of planning a trip. Okay, assume that you and your friends are joining and you are planning for a trip, maybe to Kodaikanal or the Nilgiris, wherever. All right, now you are planning. All right, so how can I go there? So go there, this is the planning, and decision is taken on that. This is called routing. Then what is forwarding? Process of going for the trip. All right, so process of going to that place is called forwarding. Hope you understand. When you look at the routing and forwarding separately, routing is the process which helps you to determine where the packet has to be pushed. If you look at the router can be connected with more than two networks, sometimes three or four or five or n number of networks. All right, now packet comes in through one of the interfaces. The router has to process the packet, and it has to find out where am I supposed to forward it. Okay, so some process is happening, that is called routing. Okay, looking at the routing table, taking a call, should I forward it to fast ethernet interface, should I send it through serial interface? So that decision is taken, which is called routing. But actually moving of packet from that interface after processing, putting in the correct outgoing interface, is called forwarding. All right, so that's the simple difference between routing and forwarding. Moving on, this is a graphics which helps us to understand between what is routing, what is forwarding. All right, so you could see on the screen a topology having 6 routers. All right, and every router is having a routing table, or in other words, it is called as forwarding table. All right, you can use that word interchangeably. They are routing table or forwarding table. Every router has its own knowledge. It's very simple, like a dictionary. Okay, so for this, okay, this value, for this value, it's simply like a lookup table. Okay, so this forwarding table or routing table is associated with every of the router. So what happens in this case? There is a packet which is arriving at the router. Okay, and the router opens up the packet, it examines the header and finds out where this packet is supposed to be sent. Okay, and it understands that the target network address is 0111. All right, and this router is also in this topology has got 3 outgoing links. Of course, there are 4 links. One is the incoming link in this example. There are 3 outgoing links. They are given with the name 1, 2, and 3. All right. So once the packet comes, it has the lookup table. So what is the header value? Header value here, it matches with the third row. Okay, first row, second row, and third row. And it says the packet has to be sent towards the output link 2. So once it takes that call, that is called routing. Pushing of this packet into the link 2 is called forwarding. All right, so routing algorithm determines the end-to-end path through network. I will demonstrate this with the packet tracer, but I'm sure every one of you have worked with routing information protocol, either RIP version 1 or RIP version 2, might be EIGRP, I'm not sure, but everyone would have done it in your laboratory. So my job is little comfortable here to explain to you that logic. Okay, so that is the routing algorithm takes care of finding out the path. But what happens? The forwarding table determines where the packet has to be forwarded. I'll explain to you through the demonstration what exactly happens when you go for the forwarding. All right, moving on. Yeah, as we have spoken about the network layer, the functionality of network layer, the other parameters about network layer or other characteristics is you have got the IP protocol. It is the network layer which connects with the data link layer, because data link layer is very crucial, as I have mentioned multiple times, which directly interfaces with the hardware, right? And the data link layer gives you only the zeros and ones combinations of frames. Now it is the network layer which is supposed to collect everything, put them together as a single bundle and transmit it to the transport layer. All right, and you have got the IP, which is a connectionless protocol, and network layer also takes care of addressing, as I have said. Is it that all about network layer? No, no, there are a lot of things, complexities involved in network layer. Let's learn them progressively. But before that, I have said that we have got the router, which is one of the interesting and the key device in the networking area, and which runs in the network layer. All right, so what is the architecture of router? It's simple, sir. You have got a machine. Okay, so I'm sure every one of you would have seen the routers, or would have worked with the actual routers which are available in our laboratory as well. Okay, so these routers are going to be a specialized hardware, a box like component, okay, which has got lot of ports, and also the processor inside it. It has got its own memory as well. Okay, and also other switching fabrics for transmission of packets from one interface to the other interface. All right, that is what overall a router is all about. Router is a specialized computer. If you take that way, that's very clear, right? All right, so what are the major components of a router? There are four things. One is set of input ports. It could be one serial input, the second serial input, third serial input, and fast Ethernet inputs, and set of output ports. Okay, but generally they all are ports. Okay, they are not like input port or output, they are all ports. But due to the flow of packets, due to the direction of the flow of packet, they are termed as the input or output port. Otherwise they are all ports. Okay, so set of ports and high speed, it's not high speed, it's a high speed switching fabric you got, and which is ably supported by the routing processor. Okay, so what are the main parameters or the functionalities of router? We have seen routing and forwarding. Take a call where the packet has to be forwarded, push the packet into you. Very simple to solve. All right, and there are two planes. One is the control plane, which is generally the software based, and you also have got the hardware based, which is the forwarding data plane. Don't be confused too much about the control plane and data plane and other things. Control plane is working on the software side. For instance, you got the transport layer packet comes in, you open the packet at the network layer, check the target network address, and go for the lookup table and find out where the packet has to be pushed. This decision is taken, that runs with the software. All right, algorithms like routing information protocol, BGP, they all support this cause. And actual forwarding based on the directions of the control plane, or based on the direction of this routing process, your forwarding happens. Very simple, keep that way. All right, so moving on. So let's look that into little more detail about the input port functions. Probably we use the magnifier and see what exactly happens on the input ports. All right, it's going to be very theoretical as of now, very simple also to understand. There is nothing complex for anyone to understand the logic. You have got the input port where you are supposed to connect a serial cable, or you are connecting a fast Ethernet cable. What happens at that time? All right, now you connect this. So what happens through the cable? You have got all your zeros and ones, or the bits are coming inside. Okay, and you have got the link layer protocol, which opens up the MAC address. Okay, at the data link layer, it opens up and finds out the MAC address and other checks and calculation, trailer, and source MAC, destination MAC. This MAC mapping of this MAC is done, and then it is queued. All right, so you could see at the physical layer, it receives the bits. You have got your network interface card. Very simple example to explain. And you connect the cable. What happens? Bits and bytes are coming in the physical layer. At the data link layer, you got the link layer protocol to work. Very famous one is your Ethernet. Yes, we will be talking about that later. And then you got your queuing. are the actual switching components. So what's happening here? A datagram is given. It looks up the output port, okay, using the forward table in the input port memory, which means it opens the packet. What should I do? So it consults with the forwarding table. What is forwarding table? Which is a routing table. How does it get the answer? By the routing process. Okay. So if the datagrams are arriving too fast, okay, they are put as a queue. Simple to understand. So what happens at the switching fabric? All right. So we are not talking about the forwarding table now. We talk about the actual hardware component of switching fabric. So it transfers the packet from the buffer. Where is the buffer? You could see in the previous screen. This is what your buffer. Okay. The packets are queued up here. Now we got this switching fabric here. And this switching fabric could be memory or bus or mesh type or the crossbar type, where it takes the packet from the input port, places in the appropriate output port. That's all, sir. How is it done? That's what we're going to see here. There are three kinds of switching fabrics. One is memory type, which is normally software based. The other one is bus type, where there is a crossbar, there is a bus where all the ports are connected and they are going to use. The third one is the crossbar, which is normally costlier, but you can go for your own path. You can go for your own path from one input port to the output port. Okay, this is about the switching fabric. All right. Looking into detail about what happens in the memory, of course, it's the traditional one. So packets are copied into the memory. Okay, you have got the switching is going to be based on the software base, so it is copied into the memory. And then the third point is important. The your processor extracts the destination address from the header, looks up, and then copies to the output port. Okay. The major drawback of switching via memory is your one packet at a time, which is you cannot do the parallel processing or you cannot do the pipelining at a time, only one packet. Have we? Yes, it has got the animation, so it goes to the memory. All right, so the others also copied. By the time the decision is taken, it is sent through the output port. All right, again, very simple logic for anyone to understand. What happens in the case of bus? The major drawback is bus contention. Sir, it is very similar to your shared memory. So you got the bus, all right, which is bus is going to be normally, cable which is used to um, transmit the data from one place to another place. So this bus runs as a backbone cable logic, and all your switching ports are connected with that. The major drawback is the bus contention, because you should have some methodology to avoid collision. And again, the drawback here is one packet at a time. What happens in the case of interconnection? Forwards multiple packets in parallel. So if you wanted to compare the software based, bus based, crossbar based switching fabric, you should understand the software based and bus based are suffering, because you can send only one packet at a time, whereas when you go for the crossbar, you can go for more than one. All right, as I said, each individual's A to Y or B to X or C to Z, they can have their own path. All right, so for instance, when a packet from port A needs to be forwarded to Y, yeah, controller closes this connection. This is all similar to switch. Okay, you can think this as a switch, this switch, and all these lines are switch. If a packet has to be forwarded this way, one, two, three, these three switches will be closed, so this path will be established and the data will be transmitted from A to Y. All right, similarly, if parallelly at the same time, if C has something to send to Z, now this switch and this switch will be closed. So the path is established and C will be able to transmit to Z. This is the reason we use the first line. Multiple packets can be sent in parallel when you talk about the interconnection, that is crossbar based switch. Is it all about? No, we need to talk about the output ports as well. Output ports, as I said, similar to the input port. Look at the previous screen. Where is it? Here you got the line termination, you got the link layer protocol, you have got the queuing process. If you come in this direction from the right hand side to left hand side on the screen, then it's going to be the output. Okay, as I said, it's all going to be only ports based on the flow of data we talk about in input or output port. So you got the switching fabric on one side, from that you have got the data to be sent on the other side. Okay, similar to that, you got the queuing, because if the output link speed is lesser than the switching fabric speed, then they all have to be made to stay in a place. Okay, that is called your queuing or buffer. And then you got your link layer protocol that is taken care by the data link layer and the physical layer. And here scheduling discipline chooses among queue datagram for transmission. Okay, there are some methodologies to decide whether the packet has to be transmitted immediately or based on the urgency. Whatever is queued on the queue can be taken up by the data link layer and it can be sent. Okay, this is what happening in every of the router. Okay, so router has a box sitting. It has got the input port on one side, output port on one side. I am also supported by the forwarding table. I have got the switching fabric. Whatever comes in stays there. If the speed is not matching, every packet is opened, check for the data, consulted with the forwarding table. Then the switching fabric is supporting the input and the output port set. So connection from input A to output Y is also made by the switching fabric. We got two or three types. I think bus type, what are the software type, and also we have got the mesh one that is a crossbar based. We also looked at the advantages and the disadvantages of these three. And then once it comes to the output port switch, then you also do some queuing based on the link speed and you push it to the data link layer and other stuff. All right, so it is taken care by the rest of the device. This happens with every of the router. All right, moving on. Yeah, this is a simple overall picture of what exactly happens. All right, so you have got the transport layer at the as the upper layer and link layer as the lower layer, and you have got the network layer. So network layer has got its own routing protocols. You got your IP protocol and ICMP protocol, which is layer 2.5 protocol, is supporting the network layer too much. Okay, in a good level, and we also have the forwarding table, which is ably populated by the routing protocols. So this is the overall picture of what happens in your network layer. All right. I think we have got more or less a good picture of what happens in the network layer. So before getting into the IP header, yeah, this is the IPv4 and its header. Before talking about this, I think we can go for a demonstration. I think that will be better. So I'll take you to the demonstration, then we'll come back to the IP header format. So this one I have created sometimes back to take a demonstration of routing protocol version 2, which is a CIDR network, classless interdomain routing. IP version 1 will not support. You know that story. We have gone for IP version 2. What have I done? I'll explain you the topology first. We have got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 networks. All right. And out of that, 192.168.1.0 network is subnetted by borrowing 1 bit, and the first subnet is assigned on LAN 1 and the another subnet is assigned on LAN 2, and we have got the classful networks here 20, 30, 40. So there are 5 networks totally, and 1.0 is subnetted, and the two portions are given to leftmost and rightmost networks here, and other networks here, the WAN links, all are classful networks. These two are classless network. Now 192.168.1.0/25 and 192.168.1.128/25, these are discontiguous network because they are connected through another network address. All right, so that's the reason I have configured router which means I have gone for RIP version 2. RIP version 1 will not work here, it will fail to do the routing. All right, so that's the reason I have gone for RIP version 2. But anyway, I'm not going to teach you RIP version 2 now. We have a little more time to learn about that. But my intention is to explain to you what happens to a packet which travels from one machine to another machine, or one end of the network here to the other end of the network here. So you have got 1.2 here /25, this is the IP, and you have got 129, this is the IP. So to demonstrate that, I go to the simulation mode. Yeah, I go to the simulation mode. Hope this is visible to you on the screen. Okay, what shall I do? I take it little left hand side. I think this should be better, right? And I go to 1.1, this machine, and I going to send a ping message to 1.129. So I go to this machine. I go to desktop, command prompt, and I give a ping command, ping 192.168.1.129. Whether pinging is successful. So what I do, I go for real time for the initially. I just wanted to check whether ping is successful. Request timed out. Yeah, ping is successful, right? So you could see on the screen the ping from this machine to another machine is successful. All right. Yes, it's successful. So we don't have a problem. We'll go to simulation mode, and then I will send the ping message once again. All right. So I have moved towards the uh, uh, simulation mode, and I have given the ping command. And as soon as I gave the ping command, you can see ICMP packet is getting ready. We have a specific session to know more about ICMP protocols. So please hold on till then. But for this demonstration, I'm not going to talk about ICMP, but we are going to concentrate on IP. All right. So let's see what happens in the packet. So I open this packet, and in the outbound PDU, I see a lot of things, but I wanted to concentrate on IP header. All right. So for you to understand it clearly, let me snip this one. Okay, my snipping tool took little more time to load. Okay, so I just snip it. All right, now it is available somewhere. So I close it down. So what I do, I permit this packet to go. I permit this packet to go, and I stop here. All right. Now what am I going to do? I'm going to open this packet. It's kept somewhere. I use the snipping, but let me see whether I can open this also in parallel. We'll see whether both can be opened up parallel. No, I don't think I can open it parallel. Oh, it's there. It's here. There is the other packet. Okay, I think I can open only one. I close it. Um, is it clear? Hope this should be clear. I'll do the snipping of more than one parameter. So I take the Ethernet as well. Okay, so let this be here. I don't want this. I open this packet. I go to the outbound PDU and I keep it here. And parallelly, I open the snipping screen also here. Yeah, I think this is somewhat better to understand. All right. So what has happened here is something interesting. This was the packet on the left hand side. Okay, I put a tick mark. Okay, so this was the packet which was taken or which was captured at the personal computer PC1, or in other words, it is at the starting place. All right, and on the right hand side, you got a screen where the packet is captured at the router's exit point. Okay, this is outbound PDU. So this is the router's exit point. All right. Now look at these two. This is the data link layer uh, protocol, and here it is the data link layer protocol. All right. You have got Ethernet here, right? The data link layer protocol which is used here is Ethernet. Here it uses the HTLC protocol. Okay, so you have got a lot of other protocols like ATM, X.25, Frame Relay, MPLS. All right, there are multiple interesting protocols are available in the data link layer, but we will concentrate only on the Ethernet because which is the predominant one, right? So it uses HTLC, it uses Ethernet. All right, so their frame structures are entirely different. We are not going to concentrate on that, but let's look at what's happening at the IP protocol left hand side and the IP protocol. Both are same protocol. IP protocol is run on the machine as well as at the router. But where do you find the difference? Can you find where the difference between these two? Just concentrate only on the IP header, and you can find one important difference here. Okay, the TTL earlier it was 128. Now the TTL it is 127. Apart from that, if you look at the source IP, if you look at the destination IP, it's not going to be changed. Okay, and similarly, fragment offsets and ID they are not going to be changed. Okay, there is a reason for it. All right. Now, the job which I have taken here is just to differentiate the values at the IP header when they are captured at different times. Okay, one at the end of or at the starting of the communication, that is at the personal computer side. The other one was captured somewhere en route to the destination. You can remember the TTL field here is 127. We'll go back to our packet tracer. We'll see whether anything else happens with that. And I stop here. I open the packet here and we'll see whether it is still 127. It is 126. You can see the TTL field is getting reduced from time to time. All right. Right. So please remember this. Now the packet goes there and then you will get the response and you come here. I'm not going to get into the detail, but you have seen that the values at the IP header are changed at every hop. Okay. So initially the TTL field when the packet was here, it was 128. Once it crosses this router, it was 127. Once it crossed this router, it became 126. Don't you get some logic out of it? This TTL field is getting reduced every time the packet makes a hop. In other words, whenever the packet crosses a router, all right, whenever a packet crosses the router, now the TTL field is getting reduced. All right, I will explain to you later why it is getting reduced. But remember one keyword about TTL, it is to avoid routing loop, right? So if I haven't brought my um, tab here to write down and draw the diagram and explain to you. I'll do it probably in the next session. What is exactly happening in routing loop and how TTL field is helping to avoid this routing loop, right? But remember the logic. Every time the router makes a hop, the TTL field is getting reduced. Now we'll go back to our presentation. Where is it? It's here. All right. So to learn about the IP datagram format, you have got the version. Version is either 4 or 6, but this protocol, this packet is only for IP version 4. IP version 6 has got a different format altogether. Although there are few fields are common, major fields are different. Okay, and you also have got the header length. Somewhere else you have got the length of the packet, right? The reason is when you have got the header length, when you got the length of the packet, header length talks about the length of the header, which includes the options field. Okay, so options may be present, may not be present. All right, hence the header length will vary. If the options field is nil, now the size of IPv4 header is 20 bytes. Okay, you have got 32 bits in a whole length, which means 4 bytes 4 bytes, 4 bytes, 4 bytes, 4 bytes. So 20 bytes is the size of IP header. At this time, it is worth recalling the size of TCP header, very similar 20 bytes. Okay, if there is no payload, TCP header, IP header put together gives you 40 bytes in size as the header size. Right. Then you have got the type of service. This is for quality of service purpose. We will learn about this type of service field in detail. And the length of the IP header is also available here. The reason is the data is also again variable based on which kind of transport layer pack protocol we are using. The payload size and the data size also vary. Then that is the very important requirement of the length field. Okay, so you have got the reason for version, header length, length. Type of service is pending for me to explain to you. The second row is the specialty of your network layer, that is the IP header. You got 16-bit identifier, flags, and fragment offset. Though we have got another half an hour time, probably in another session, to talk about the fragmentation and reassembly, let me conclude this. I'll just come for the completion sake. I'll tell what they are. When you have got the packet from the transport layer, the packets are segmented based on MSS, maximum segment size, right? Hope you have recalled now. And when the packets are sent to the network data link layer from the network layer, the packets are again fragmented using MTU, maximum transfer unit. Okay, so a single transport layer segment can be divided into 3 or 4 or n number of network layer packets. Okay, so when they are sent as a network layer packet, we are using the connectionless protocol in the data link network layer, and it also may go for the packet switching. that different segments may take different route to the destination. All right. When they are sent, when they are received at different through different routes, there is a possibility that the 10th packet may reach ahead of the ninth packet or first packet. Okay, so they will be arriving at different orders. Now they all have to be put together. All right, for that the 16-bit identifier is used. So every of the packet, every of the transport layer segment will be given one 16-bit identifier. So every of the segment, IP segment also will have the 16-bit identifier. When they all come to the receiver side, all, for instance, 700 is the identifier. Okay. So whoever has got 16-bit identifier as the 700 value, they all will be clubbed together. You got it? And they'll be placed. Okay, sir, how can I find out whether it is a second packet or first packet? Yes, that's a good question. You have got fragment offset. So fragment offset helps you to see whether this is a first or second or third or fourth, so that based on that value, you can rearrange them at the receiver side. Okay, sir, then what is that flag? Yeah, flag bit tells you to say whether this is the last bit in that segment or not. I'm sorry, the last segment, last packet in that segment or not. Very similar to your int mark in the railway compartment, which are normally found in the last compartment. Okay, which indicates that nothing more is trailing. Okay, no more compartments are added. The train ends there. All right, it's very similar to that. When you have got a specific value of flag, it says more bits are following or more packets are following. When you have got some other value, it says, okay, this is the last packet, something like that. All right. So you have got 16-bit identifier. I'll explain to you an example in the another session. But remember, the identifier flags and fragment offsets are handy when you go for the segmentation and reassembly. The third row, you have got the TTL, time to live, which I said it is for routing loop. To avoid the routing loop, again, I will take an example to explain to that. Next, you got the upper layer protocol. So this upper layer protocol indicates to which transport layer protocol the packet has to be forwarded. Generally, it is TCP or UDP. Okay, so that will be specified here. You also have got this header checksum. Checksum calculation is very similar to your TCP checksum calculation, which is in IPv4. Remember, in IPv6, we don't have the header checksum at all for very interesting reason, right? But then you have got your 32-bit IP address, source IP and destination IP, all right? Whereas your IPv6 has got 128 in size, bits in size. So you know the reason of source IP and destination IP to indicate the IP address of the source sending machine and the receiving machine and the target machine. Then you got the options field and the variable data field. Okay, so these are all the various fields of your IP datagram. Okay, header length in bytes, type of data, maximum number of remaining hops. Okay, decrement each counter. All right, upper layer protocol to deliver the packet, total datagram length. Yes, for fragmentation reassembly, you got 3 fields. Okay, options field. Then yeah, overhead is normally 20 bytes of TCP plus 20 bytes of IP in majority of the cases. If there is no application payload, the minimum of 40 bytes. All right, so I stop here my presentation or the class today. I also stop sharing, so I'll go to the portal where I also will stop recording.